Yes, welcome back to Dyl Friends. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much for coming back. We appreciate you. If it's your first time, weird place to start.
Welcome, though.
Welcome. If it is the first time, welcome. Darcy, how are you?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. Good to be back.
Mine, how are you?
I'm good. I'm really happy to be here.
So good to see you.
It's been a while.
Hey, you're starting with us full time next week.
I am.
Wow.
I am.
So mine was 3 days.
Crazy.
3 days a week.
Oh, well, I was
You came,
one
like-
day, then I was 2 days, and then I was 3 days.
We were chatting about this
She's
earlier.
5
Mum was
days.
on the streets, remember? And we brought her
Yeah. Darcy messaged me and he said, hey.
Streets killed me.
Yeah.
Oh, God. Has anyone seen that TikTok?
in. No.
Guys, I just want to put this out there because someone, we're getting some really deep and meaningful messages on Instagram about the intros. They are going a little bit longer because we're giving away $5,000 a week for 3 more weeks.
Yeah, 3 more.
3 more weeks.
Yep.
After that, we'll get back into regular programming where we just, get into the episodes. But for now, we're giving away some cash. So we're going to be doing that because full credit to the team at Dove Men+Care for showing care as sponsors of this podcast. Our Dove Men+Care hotline is still open. Head to the link in the show notes and share your full credit to the boys' story for your chance to win $5,000 thanks to Dove Men+Care. There's three more weeks, as we said. We're giving away $5,000 a week and there's still plenty of time to enter. But before we get into talking about Ali, let's give that ka-ching away.
I'm excited. I'm really excited.
You haven't heard this?
I haven't heard it.
Mon and I actually listened to this earlier today.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Before we get into it, what would you do with $5,000?
Oh, man.
A holiday?
Good
You just
amount.
got back from Europe.
I
Good
did
amount.
just get back from Europe.
It's enough to put a bit of savings,
Well, I want to
splurge a little bit more.
Splurge.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm like saving for a house. I wouldn't want to, you want to say put it
How,
towards
like,
that, but like
it's-
what's $5,000 going to do in the grand scheme of
It's
things?
such a thing. You're like, $5,000 for the mortgage, but that's so boring.
So
Isn't it?
boring.
Like, it's like you don't
It's not a
see
podcast
that.
answer.
You
So
know?
boring. Maybe I'd go to a last minute snow trip actually. I haven't been up to the snow this year and that's
a good
a
one.
lot
That's
expensive.
a bloody good one. That's a
So
really
that's
good
what
one.
I'd do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Snow
I think
trip.
I'd just travel somewhere.
Yeah.
Just get out there and, weekend away or something.
I'm going to Bali in a couple of weeks.
Yes.
And the one thing, I
With
think I've
Brett.
said this before. No, not with Brett. We just miss each other, unfortunately. But the one thing I love, and I've spoken about this on maybe a minute before, the one thing I love is flying well. So I'd put that on upgrade my seats.
Oh,
to
that's
business flight.
good.
I don't
Up
even
the
know if that
pointy
would,
end.
Would you
I don't know
take
if that would
Chaz
get
and
you
Max
there.
with
No,
you? or
they can
you'd
stay down the back.
Now,
No.
what is it actually like up there?
I have done it before. It's pretty
Yeah.
good. I've done it on points, credit card points. We can do an episode. Actually, last minute. I know. Sorry, guys. I know the intros are long, but we will. Once the season finishes, once Footy and Friends is done because the years is done, we're going to get back into Teach Me Please.
Yes.
Woo.
The first episode I want to do, and I'm not sure if this is like appropriate, but I'm really into this. I don't want to. It's a bit of a taboo topic, somewhat from people. Credit cards. I want to do a Teach Me Please on credit cards because I've sort of hacked life with points and getting places on credit cards.
I think that's really smart. I've never had a credit card, so I would love to learn about
You just
that.
got to be smart. It's like gambling a little bit. You just got to know your limits and know where to do it, put some things in action to get it done. But anyway, moving on. The winner of this week's 5K is Laura Gartland.
Laura.
So listen.
G'day, Dyl and friends. Laura here. My full credit Dove Men+Care nomination goes to my younger brother, John. As a 28-year-old female, I got into footy a bit later, so started playing about 4 to 5 years ago. My brother's been there every step of the way. Starting out as a spectator / part-time boundary runner. My brother transitioned into a coach when he had to step away from the game himself due to a battle with concussion. Since then, he's become our fitness coach because he ran a marathon. He'd want me to put that in there, and is also our assistant coach. He brings so much energy to the team, has so much footy smarts to impart, and has been so valuable to our team, but also to me personally. All those days in lockdown, he'd drag me out to the oval to teach me how to kick. We've both got a left foot, so it's been pretty handy. And yeah, he fits it all in with full-time work and study. Every game day, he makes it feel like it's the most important thing in his day. He genuinely cares, and yeah, he's just really helps me develop this pure love for the game, which I already had it as a spectator, but playing has just been another ball plaque, and it wouldn't be the same without him. So full credit to your brother. Love you so much, Johnny. Hope you get back everything you give.
That's beautiful, isn't
He's
it?
so nice.
Do you get along with your brother? Is that good?
He's never. I actually don't think he watched me play footy once. To be
Man.
honest,
Jazz,
Jazzy, yeah, didn't
it's a
come.
shame.
Oh, maybe he did.
because you said you're a pretty handy midfielder. Didn't you?
Oh yeah,
She was a little-
it's not about me. It's not about. It's about Laura.
That's beautiful, Laura and Johnny. Congratulations, guys. 5K. Did she? I noticed that, but Johnny had a concussion and he stopped playing footy. Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, hopefully everything's going all right there. But yeah, we've actually got a couple episodes coming up on some more concussion stuff. Really, really interesting episode coming up actually later. I think it's getting released in maybe a couple of weeks.
Yeah, a
few weeks time with Kobe Stevens.
Yeah.
Just a teaser of that one. But
It's going to be a goodie.
really good one.
Very good.
But congratulations to Laura and Johnny on that. And a massive thank you to Dove Men+Care.
Huge.
I'm not getting over this. I wish we could literally give away 5K every week for the rest of my life. But 3 more weeks to go.
Wow.
We've got another $15,000 to give away. And did you speak to? Did they call Laura?
Yes,
I wish we got to call.
No,
Or
no,
did
I call them
you
every week.
fucking call.
Yeah.
Why don't I get to fuck?
Well, I like
just finding it out.
having the conversation.
Darcy's like, I'm
I
claiming
feel like
this.
Oprah.
Why do you not get to? Why I would like to be in there and call
You
them.
know what? How about you do the next one?
I would have liked to have done them all.
Yeah, but
I
you're a
thought
busy
I
man
thought
and-
Dove were calling.
No, I get to call. It's my favourite part of the week. I love it.
Darcy just took it and ran.
It's so
I
good,
appreciate
'cause
that.
they-
What do you
Well,
say?
I know it would be good, mate.
They
I'd
think
love
I'm
to
giving
do
them the 5K.
Yeah.
Happy to help.
Oh, it's so
It's
and was she
beautiful.
wrapped?
Stoked.
Oh, well, of
So
course she
stoked.
would be.
And
That's
well
so
deserved.
Good. Yeah, bloody oath.
Oh, it's really
that's awesome.
exciting.
So, guys, there's still time. 3 more weeks to go. Make sure you head to the link in the show notes. And as we said, our Dove Men+Care hotline is still open. 5K, 3 more weeks. Really exciting.
Got to
Massive.
enter.
Got to enter. Hey, guys, let's get to this week's episode. As we said, brought to you by friends at Dove Men+Care. This week on the show, third time lucky with Ali Terai, a good friend of mine. Good
Is it
friend
3
of both
times
yours.
now? I
Yeah,
feel like he's on
3 times. He's
every
come on
few
a few
weeks.
times, yeah.
Came on with Vin.
Vin and Ali came on. Go
Yep.
back and listen to that one if you haven't already. Came on maybe the end of last year.
Yep.
I can't remember what we spoke about then.
Recalibrate.
Recalibrate.
Yes, that was a
Now,
good one.
That's it. The reason why we're getting him on this week is because in like 3 of the last episodes, he's sort of come up in conversation. And I've had a heap of messages from the audience being like, hey, we need to talk more about Recalibrate, what it is, da-da-da. We will go a little bit into that today and do a bit of bits and pieces on what that is because I'm obviously still doing that myself and need to, look at it on my own personal stuff, and he'll give us a bit of an insight into what it is and if you haven't heard of it before. But also, Ali's just someone that, I spend a lot of time with, I get a lot of value from, and I'd love to sort of share that with other people. This week I said to him, I want him to come on, have a chat, like, what do you want to speak about? And normally guests like, oh, whatever you want. He sent through like an essay of things that like we're going to talk about this week. So basically, have you read the book The Alchemist?
No,
You
I
ever heard of it?
haven't. I've heard of it, but I
Yeah.
haven't read it.
So it's like a really famous book, and he reckons it sort of like kickstarted for him this, life of just fulfilling his own sort of path and what he wanted to do. And he went over to the Olympics recently. He was trying to get me to go over with him.
Of course he did. He
went to-
just does shit.
Just
Yeah,
does
he's
shit, man. He's
very
a doer.
cool.
Just went. Saw Simone Biles win gold. Saw the dream team play basketball.
That's so
we'll
good.
talk about all of that. But before that, he went to Egypt and followed the book, the path of the book.
Oh,
So I'll let him
wow.
talk more about it because we haven't had the episode yet. I don't even know what it is. Talks about travel and adventures. We've both read this book. He's read the book. I've listened to the book called Die With Zero, which is a really awesome book that I loved. With his podcast he does with Vin, they talk about books and learnings, and that's how I've been getting into more books. He's written a mode here. I don't even know what this means. It says Ayurveda and yoga. Ayurveda and yoga.
Oh,
you know
yeah,
what
I've
that is?
seen that word. I actually don't know what. I
don't
could
know.
pretend like I do, but I don't.
I don't know
Some
what
sort
it
of
is either.
taekwondo, perhaps.
I think it's a bit of
like
taekwondo.
it's surely like got to do with meditation or something, right?
Something like that.
Mind, body, soul.
Mind, body, soul. And then the last one is really important. I was chatting to him the other day and I was like, mate, like I just need to get to the end of the year. I can feel it. I just need to get to that break. And he's like, this is the time. Everyone wants to get to the end of the year and reset, but like there's still so much to get out of the year. Like it's August. There's still so much time to if you've got something you're working on, don't just wish the year away, because this is a period where it does start to people just go, oh, I'm just going to just get to the finish line. So, really interesting. We'll make up some things like what are 3 things I can do to progress me to make me feel good about the year. So it'll be cool.
It's really exciting.
Can't wait.
Frank's
My
is.
chair's a squeaky chair.
Anyway, guys, let's get into it. Ali Terai, thank you. How are you, my friend?
Very good.
It's good to see you.
Good to see you.
You're actually looking very,
Say it.
good.
I don't know. Oh, wow. I didn't know how that was going to go.
Very discoloured.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, no, it's because
Yeah.
I've been where it's been hot.
Yeah,
So
nice.
I think I got
Mate, how's
brown.
your trip?
It was amazing.
Yeah.
So good. Love getting away and yeah, went to Egypt for a week, which was insane. So that's why I'm probably looking a little bit more coloured. It was 45 degrees. I think on the phone I was like, when it says 45 but feels like 50.
Was it that hot?
It was insane.
Was that your first time in Egypt?
Yeah, first time. So
Is it everything you sort of think it would be? Like, I don't want to get into these like Joe Rogan conspiracy theories like this early into a podcast because like I always worry two guys chatting on a podcast about like the Egyptian like how like they were made.
Yeah.
But when you go there and you look at it, what's your first thought?
Yeah, it's like how was this made?
What do they say? Like,
Well, I feel like I did a mini degree in ancient Egyptian history because you go on tours and you're getting shown around, and the first 2 or 3 days, like my brain just couldn't click into like the different eras and all the dynasties, and like they had the pharaohs and the gods and the kings, and then all the it's like you got Tutankhamun and like all these different sort of times, and then it goes into the Romans, and then it goes into like Moses, and it goes into like a whole. It's pretty much the start of civilization as we know it, right? And then you look at the things like the pyramids, and they're pretty much perfect, and they align up with like Orion stars and all these things. It's like, how'd you do this without drones and computers?
It's almost at the state like we. It's so hard to comprehend, and like I know there's a million conversations like this to keep going, but there's no answer to what it may be. But I've watched so many like YouTube, things on
aliens.
Yeah, on aliens. No, not on aliens, but on the how would you say, like the infrastructure of how they're built, and like some of the symmetry of the lines, like they don't even get that close with modern technology today on how well they're built.
I think somebody tried recently, and they got the pyramid pretty close, but they still butchered the last like 20 or 30 meters. So even with modern technology, it was pretty hard to do. But they keep just discovering new things. Like I heard something the other day where they potentially had some hydraulic systems that would then maneuver the blocks. I'm not an engineer, so I'm just butchering all this stuff. And they'd use like the flood waters. And there's all these different theories. But yeah, whatever it is, my sort of feeling is that they just did similar to what we've done today in today's age, is that they consolidated so much knowledge over 1,000 years. And even when you look at the temples, like there's so much record keeping even inside the buildings. Like imagine now if you walked in to the Empire State Building, you don't really see it, but like they inscribed every centimeter of every major temple that they had. It had calendars in it. It had like, there was one temple I went into and they had like scalpels and, pretty much a lot of what we use in today's modern medicine just drawn into the wall. So there was obviously a fair bit of intelligence going around there. They had massive libraries. They had, I think, just an awesome, they must have had an innovation, focus that they've kind of captured, but we still don't fully understand.
Isn't it interesting on a really, basic level of building and stuff now, and I know how incredible our, to build a skyscraper and stuff like that, that's another story that obviously people couldn't do back in the day. But you look at what sort of happened when you talk about that, the inscription and the way it's built, right? And then you look to sort of, if anyone now lives in an old home, say like a nice old brick, house that was built in the, early 100 years ago, and how nice like the ceilings are and all those like little bits and pieces, and you're like, fuck, like we don't even build shit that nice now. I know it's because of cost of material and all those bits and pieces, but we've really like sort of lost, just like stopped making really cool stuff. 'Cause it takes too long
and too expensive. Like some of the things, like just the raw materials, what those temples and stuff are built out of, you couldn't rebuild them again. Like that marble would wipe out a country's GDP alone. Like, so it's insane. But yeah, it was pretty mind blowing just to get that insight into that history. And there's a lot of different theories even going back then, like whether it was, whether the people were slaves versus where they actually just aligned with the vision of the kings at the time and all this. But, you park all of that regardless of what they built, it's just still incredible. And the fact that it's still standing, and a lot of it's standing relatively untouched, it blows your mind. And, you know, it just got me thinking about, you know, vision and execution and how that's possible even over like people were doing this stuff 5,000 years ago at a really elite level. And then I started thinking, I'm like, I wonder what we'll have that's been built recently that's still standing in 5,000 years' time, that, you know, the future AI will go and visit as tourists.
I think about this with music.
Yeah.
So, like, you know how, for me, like when I went to my nan's house as a kid, I'd always remember listening to like 3AW radio station. It was like, I think it was...
That still
Neil,
survived.
You know, they're still there. I actually worked there. Neil Mitchell, but one of the songs was Frank Sinatra. It's like, that's life. That's what all the people say. I think it was Neil Mitchell. It might have been someone else. Anyway, you think of that music and how like culty it is, and like the 80s and the 60s, 70s, 80s of that music. What will be the music when we're kids? Because now there's so much more music. You know, there's Spotify rap, there's like SoundCloud rap, there's like all this sort of different type of music that's so it's great for the time, but will it last the test of time? Who knows?
Yeah, it'd be interesting.
Don't know.
I doubt it.
One other thing before we actually, we're not really going anywhere today. Guys, this is just a very long form sort of conversation, but
we can do another 40 minutes on Egypt.
We can do. Yeah, I didn't think we'd be talking about Egypt as in depth as we have, but really, before we talk about why you went to Egypt and in the Olympics, you got back from the Olympics recently too. I want to touch on that, but I saw a TikTok recently. That's where I get my knowledge from these days.
Yep.
It's
the greatest form of education.
It's the greatest form of education for any person.
Chantal, my wife, would attest to that as well. She loves
you don't need school, you just need to scroll TikTok. And this guy had this really profound, like out of the million videos, some hit you and you're like, wow, that was actually really good. And this guy was talking about traveling being the ultimate form of becoming present. Because, and I really agreed with this, because people always say, oh, you know, traveling is life-changing. It's one of these things. It's like, is it life-changing, or is it just because you're in that circumstance, you're just becoming more present to things? Like if you drive to work, you almost go, I don't even know what way I went today. I'm not looking at the streets. I don't remember where I went. I'm just in my own head. I'm here, I'm there. I'm not looking at the paneling on the walls or the top of the buildings and going, fuck, that looks beautiful today. Look at the sun, look at this. Whereas when you're away and you've never experienced something before, you're walking around Egypt or Europe or the States, you're going, wow, look at all these things. So you're just so present in the moment that you can't really get in your everyday life. So that's nearly, I really enjoyed that, the way it was articulated.
For sure. Like it changes, I think, just in the normal day-to-day that we all experience. You end up just in an autopilot, right? And you become somewhat unconscious, right? You hop in the car, you go to work, as you said, you finish the day, you get into a rhythm, whether it's meetings or whatever it is that you're doing, you know. Then Monday to Friday kicks by, and it's like, okay, like where are you at? And that's why I love travel so much, is because of that, because it's a pattern break, right? Like say, for example, going somewhere like Egypt, coming from Australia, it just completely blows your mind, because the smells are different, the sounds are different, the noise, like everything there is so different, and it just switches your brain into a completely different mode that you just can't really duplicate when you're in the normal routine of life. And I think just as people, like one of the words I was chatting to somebody about the other day, I think after we go traveling, or after we have a fundamental change in our life, like travel is just one form of that, where you get to shake things up a bit. It nearly gives you an opportunity for a rebirth in a way, right? Like it's a little bit esoteric talking about it like that, but you do change a little bit when you go into a different environment. You learn about different cultures, you see different landmarks and sites, and you have different experiences and moments. And then you sort of come back, and it's like you nearly then reintegrate parts of that into who you are when you return on those journeys. And I think that's why, even if you go back through history, people would always talk about going on pilgrimages, right? Generally they'd go on like religious pilgrimages that were these journeys where they'd walk for days and then they'd end up at an end point. But I don't think it's actually about going to that location. It's actually about the transformation that takes place when you're on that journey. And they're nearly like a symbol of like a chapter of life or something shifting, you know, within yourself.
What a segue, man. Because the book that you're probably referring to, and that exact storyline that we've both read, I read it a long time ago, and I suppose it's one of those books that you, as soon as you start, it's like the number one book as soon as you start just wanted to like learn something new, you go to is The Alchemist. I read it probably when I was finishing up in footy, and to be completely honest, like I got it, sort of. I was sort of like, what the hell is this book? Like I get it. but the underlying message of the journey is more important than the destination. We say that stuff all the time, but you know what? They cringe because they're true, and they last the best of time because it's true. This journey, the trip that you did, going to the Olympics post this, but it was actually following that path of The Alchemist.
Yep.
Can you give us a quick rundown, because I probably haven't given it enough credit as it deserves, this book. It's obviously one of the most highest selling books in the world. And the journey that you took place, you actually followed the book.
A little bit. But yeah, the Alchemist, it's a global bestseller written by a guy called Paulo Coelho.
It was written in Portuguese.
Yeah. So I think he's either Brazilian or Argentinian.
There's Brazilian, I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
And it's funny, right? Like, even though the book's fundamentally about a shepherd and his journey to find treasure, right? But then it's got all these deeper life lessons, and there's a lot of people out there that would say it's the most life-changing book. Like, I think Oprah categorizes it right up there. Will Smith loves this book. A lot of athletes always reference it. For me personally, I think it probably is. It's if it's not my favorite book, it would be firmly in the top 3 and has been for the last 10 years.
It's a bit of a gateway drug.
It is. It's a little bit of a gateway drug, but as you said before, it hits people differently at different points in their life. Like, some people just read it and be like, oh, that's a great story. It didn't really do anything. For other people, they'll read it and be like, that's just fundamentally changed my life, and I'm going to nearly follow it as a guide. Right, so it can go. It's a bit like The Power of Now. We've spoken of that book too. Some people are like, what the hell is this? This is rubbish. Not for me. Other people are like, amazing, fundamentally changed my life. So I think that's the thing with books as well. They're very subjective, and I think they do depend on when they hit you at what chapter of life you're in. What I'd recommend with The Alchemist, even if you have read it or you haven't read it, give it a go. And then if it's not the right time, give it a go again in a year or two, and then reread it. Like, I try to read it nearly every year, and I have over the last sort of 10. But for me personally, reading that book, I read it the first time, I think around 2014, actually when I started Future Golf. And I remember just that correlation of that shepherd going on this journey to find treasure, and then nearly seeing the parallels, because it's now been 10 years since started Future Golf, and we just reflected on that mid-July that's just passed. And then going, because, without ruining the story, but one of the parts within the book is that he wants to go and see the pyramids, right? So I kind of got that moment as well, and it was nearly like the celebration of finishing that 10-year journey, the first chapter of Future Golf, and then just sitting there at the pyramids, having a look there and being like, this is pretty cool. Like, started off nearly just with a pebble of an idea and a dream, and then being able to actually fulfill that, in terms of what I had kind of envisioned. And then ending it at the place where the book was set was something pretty special. So it was a really cool moment, and, sat there, funnily enough, because Egypt's on a lot of countries' do not travel list. I was nearly at the pyramids by myself. So it was nice having that. There was about 7 people there, where usually I think there'd be thousands of people. So yeah, it was just amazing, watching the sunset come down over the pyramids, and I actually had the book there, read a couple of pages out of it, and took a little photo. I was like, this is pretty cool.
Guys, I'm weird. I'm a weird guy.
I'm weirder.
You are, but I love it, man.
We're mutually weird, so that's why we love this.
You're my gateway drug into weirdness, and I just love chatting with you. I love that you've done that. You went over there by yourself, did this incredible trip, and then obviously went to the Olympics after. Do we talk about that, or was that life changing?
No, the Olympics was. I'm sure cool. It was life changing.
I must mention as well, you were borderline forcing me to come with you, but it just wasn't the right time for me. I had those times when because context as well. If someone's listening for the first time, Ali and I have been friends for a long time. We first met when we went to Scotland together after 2 weeks of meeting each other. Had a pretty awesome trip over there.
Good first date.
We had a very good first date. Just travelled to the Gulf and had a really, really awesome time. Then our friendship sort of blossomed, I'd say, from there. And really, really good person to get on this series with Dove Men+Care, because I think I actually gave a lot of my full credit to you. Did you listen to that episode?
No.
You probably
I will though.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I did talk about.
I felt it.
Yeah, you felt it. You spoke about the impact that you've had on me, and I hope I've had some impact on you too. 100%. Not as much, but a little bit.
Lots.
And also came up in the Barras episode and the Sheasel episode as well. So I thought we need to get Ali in again just to talk about a few things and go from there, because there's a heap of stuff that, as a part of the, what we both sort of believe in about, looking after ourselves and our mates, there's a lot there. Before we jump into the Olympic chat, I just want to tease a little bit because we spoke about the Alchemist there. Your podcast, the Vin and Ali show, if anyone does remember too, actually did a podcast with Ali and Vin maybe 2 years ago now.
It was 2 years ago, yeah.
2 years ago now. Vin's one of the biggest keynote speakers in the world.
10 million plus followers, just dominating in the communication
Joe
space.
Rogan hits him up. The Rock hits him up.
Yeah.
It's just weird things sort of going on in his life at the moment.
Impressive human being.
There's a podcast that you two do together, which I've been genuinely binging. You know when like your mate, and you just said it because you don't listen to me, but you know when your friends
I
do
listened to the
something.
Brass episode, I listened to the sheet. Listening, I just didn't listen
No,
to
that's
that one.
good.
All right, good.
When your mates do something sometimes.
You make a lot of content.
You don't, I know, too much. You don't consume it as much because you think it's there, but this pod's been unreal for me because I don't read a lot. Like it I enjoy reading when I can. Like I'm going to Bali in a couple of weeks and I can't wait because we've got the nanny. It's going to be sick. Going to just like indulge into a few books.
Yep.
But the Vin and Ali show where you guys talk about, you break down the books and stuff. I've been listening to heaps. Die with Zero has been a massive one for me.
Yep.
That I've really enjoyed. There's been heaps there that I want to talk about later on. And then I want to talk about today, this time of year, and I feel this creeping up in myself a little bit too, which is why it's important to chat. Like, what is it? We're in August. It's getting to that fun time of the year. We can sort of feel the hair about to sort of come down a bit. Finals are about.
Can't.
You don't have any hair, but finals are about to sort of hit upon us. Then Christmas is there, and you sort of can see that finish line. And I think for me, traditionally in the past, it's a time to like take the the pedal off, the foot off the pedal, and just relax a little bit. When realistically, there's so much of the year to go to. Yeah. And you don't want to use all your tickets. Like you can find something else and get the most out of the year that you want to do. So, a few of those things. But the Olympics, how was it? Good.
Olympics was awesome. Like my headline on the Olympics is just there was just such a ridiculous collection of greatness, right? Like there's a couple of things there. The Olympics sometimes gets a bad rap. Like one of the things was just the media, probably prior to the Olympics, like saying that France didn't want it and all of this. When we got over there, the Parisians were so amazing. Well, those that were left, I think a lot went on holidays because they couldn't get to work and stuff. But it was like the friendliest I've ever seen Paris in my entire life. And it's just so crazy, like an event like that, where you're genuinely just sitting on a bus or a train and you're speaking to people from all over the world. Like to have that sort of collection of people from like that diversity, and you're just finding out about everyone's sort of countries, what's going on, what events they're watching. Like it was such a nice energy, like such a positive and uplifting kind of energy where everyone's sort of coming together. And I think that's a really special part of the Olympics. And I really do hope that the Olympics does continue to flourish just from experiencing that as my first. But I'd highly recommend it in terms of an event. And then just the variety of greatness that you get to see. Like you think about Olympics, for the majority of those athletes, they're training for 4 years, 5 years, or maybe a lifetime for like sometimes 30 seconds, like a moment that's going to last 30 to like 10 seconds to a minute, right? And there's so much pressure and the stakes are so high because really as an Olympian, like if you're not at your peak in that moment, there isn't really another thing after that. Like you might have your world champs or something like that, but the only thing that really gets that spotlight, especially for the smaller sports, is probably the Olympics. So I just had so much admiration for their greatness. And then you see athletes like Simone Biles and, our swimmers and the USA basketball team, like doing their thing and actually really caring and trying. And mate, it was inspiring.
What was your like witnessing greatness?
Yeah.
What was your like top 3 things you saw where you're like, fuck, this is huge?
The warm up of the USA basketball was ridiculous.
Who did you see them play?
South Sudan.
Yeah.
And then you just see like they're just warming up and like Tatum throws an alley to himself and dunks it. Then Anthony Edwards throws an alley to himself and dunks it. Then LeBron throws an alley to himself and dunks it. And I think Durant throws an alley to himself and dunks it. And I'm like, this is just the warm up. And that's maybe the best thing I've ever seen.
Do you reckon they sort of like flicked in their minds? They knew like, hey, we're putting on a show here like for the world.
It's for sure. And I think even for them just playing together, because obviously they'll be rivals all throughout the season. But there's got to be something like, I'm guessing even similarly in the AFL when we had State of Origin or the All-Australian team would go off and play. I think just being around the best of the best and then actually competing, because like the NBA has an All-Star game, but it doesn't really mean anything. They use it, it's like the loosest game ever. But when they're playing seriously, and then I wasn't there for it, but then you watch the end of the Olympics where Steph Curry goes nuts in the last 2 games and just puts another stamp on his greatness, and LeBron gets the MVP. Like, I think even just for their careers to do it on that international stage, there's something probably a little bit different about that. But that was ridiculous. And then got to see one of Simone Biles's events, the vault, and she was just that much better than everyone else and just won it. And obviously she's probably like the face of the Olympics, I'd say.
The vault is the run up,
bounce off the thing, do
just,
like 50 flips in the air and then land it.
Made her, like, watching her like go, like, it's
What?
I just think of like the level of training that like that's probably what my mind goes back to, just how many times they've done this, like at training, no one's watching.
She
Imagine
had
going to that gym middle of the year, like 2 years into an Olympic sort of bid, and you could just go, like no one would be there watching that.
full on. And do you know much about her story?
No.
So after the Tokyo Olympics,
sorry, I have seen the a little bit of the doco, but not a lot. Yeah.
Like, so she pretty much had like the yips and retired. Right, like so when she
That's
was
some mental health issues and stuff.
Well, I think it happens. I don't know too much about it, but I think it happens to some gymnasts where they lose where they are in the spin. So it's called the twisties,
the twisties,
or something, right? So they're twisting around in the air, and it can actually be really dangerous because if you lose that orientation, you can land on your head and on your neck and all of these things. And she's a crazy athlete doing ridiculous flips. So she had that. And then pretty much, I think she ended up leaving the Tokyo Olympics like nearly halfway through because she just couldn't land the tricks, and then was pretty much going to retire, then came back and then won 3 gold medals and a silver. Like,
it's pretty impressive.
Pretty impressive. So, and she was already probably the GOAT and then just became more of the
Huge.
GOAT.
So, Simone Biles, USA basketball. Who else was cool?
Yeah, just watching. We got to see 3 Australian gold medals, swimming as well.
Did you see it that night where they just won it bang, bang, bang?
Yeah, we're like the first 15 minutes of the event was 2 Australian medals. And
That's huge.
And then they had the French guy, Leon Marchand, straight after it. So the crowd was going mental.
He won, did he break the record or won 3 in a night?
Like,
what was it? At his own home Olympics.
So this was really the hard part. When you're there, because like
you want to get around him.
Well, you can't. We weren't actually following it because we were just darting around to so many things. You don't actually know what's going on and who's breaking records or whatever. But yeah, I'm pretty sure he dominated, and they think he's going to be the next Michael Phelps. So
crazy.
Yeah, so mate, it was a lot of greatness there, and yeah, if LA's coming up, and then we've got Brisbane after it. So
LA, I'd be keen to go to LA.
LA could be pretty cool.
Yeah.
But,
did you go to the breakdancing?
No, I wasn't there for that. I missed that. But geez, that's taken over, hasn't it?
I'm so torn. I feel so sorry.
Where do you sit? Like,
I don't know. Like, I feel so bad.
Yeah.
There's 2 parts. Like, there's 2 parts of the argument. Right? Like, one is you feel so bad, but 2, I'm like, this is a great business opportunity. You could, you can somehow turn it. I think, but also like, it's that bad. I don't know nearly if you can or not. You just got to embrace it, really. But in all seriousness, I do feel somewhat really bad for her because it is like a full-blown meme, like turned into like worldwide full-blown meme.
Well, it's become the biggest story of the Olympics,
literally,
arguably.
Literally. Like getting 3 zeros and now you're bigger than like Simone Biles in like the whole Olympic
Jimmy
Games.
Fallon and I know. Well, we're talking about it, right?
Ray
like
Gun,
it's still,
and we're talking about it.
And we're still talking about it.
I don't know what the message, like you need someone really good on your PR team to help you spin it, but it's one of those things, I come back to this quote all the time that Jonah Oliver says, and I come back to it even in my own life on such a smaller scale, but anything you do, it's the price of admission, right? Whether it's good or it's bad, you've got to put yourself out there. Like you can't sit in your room for the rest of your life. If you want to be comfortable and never face adversity or have anything good happen, you can just sit in your room and do nothing, but you put yourself out there. Good things are going to happen, bad things are going to happen, price of admission.
And I think that's it. It's like I could see both sides, to an extent. And I'm not really too much of a fan of hate just in general, right? Like, because it's like, well, that person hasn't actively gone out looking to be probably that big a profile.
No.
Like probably just,
you could actually plan
realistically
that.
just probably just wanted to do the dance and then like celebrate with the team and then finish up, right? And now
go to Europe, have a holiday, just chill.
Sometimes life just deals you a different hand, and I think it'll just be more interesting to see how the situation's navigated.
Yeah.
It's like, can she turn it into something, as you said, that's beneficial to her?
It's just crazy now as well. I speak about TikTok.
Pile on even more.
Yeah, well, I don't know how it will go. I don't even know why we're talking about it, but I think that it's going to be really interesting to see what happens over the next few months, how, like, obviously she approaches it, but then you go into all those people who have sort of like done their research into it and found that like she made apparently made her own committee and then it put herself on it. And you're like, oh, I don't know. Anyway, it's a hard one. Hey, I'd love to. So a few things I've been speaking about in the minis when I do my little solo minis sometimes. Are a couple of these references, but I thought it'd be good to get you on today because you're big into your reading. You love your books, as I mentioned earlier. I'd love to. It's always like on my bucket list to try and do more reading throughout the year. One book that really this year has been a big wake up call for me is Die with Zero. Obviously, can you give a bit of a rundown about what the book's about? And there's sort of many ways you can interpret it, the book of like how you want to get out of it. But there's been one little bit that comes back to like my Recalibrate is there. So maybe just give us a bit of a rundown of the book.
Yeah, I think a lot of the core idea behind the book is that a lot of us, we live life, and when we get to the end of it, we've just stockpiled a lot of things, and we're leaving a lot sort of in the tank, if that makes sense. And his notion in that book is, you know, even things like, say, with money, for example, is like people work their entire lives and then they get to 70, 80 years old and they've got, you know, maybe this amount of money sitting in their super or whatever it is, but they don't actually plan how much they truly need. And then they don't actually distribute it all. They don't spend it while they're in their peak. They don't make the most of those opportunities when they come to them. So the fundamental idea for me with the book is make the most of the moments and your resources when you've got them, whatever that is to you, right? And start really, like to me, it's a reminder to live consciously as well. You know, and that's something that I've been speaking to a couple of people out recently is the world we live in, like even with social media and everything, it's so easy to just live unconsciously. And when I say living unconsciously, I just mean that you just go with the flow and you're really reactive to life. Days just sort of fly by and months fly by, and then you're in that notion of, oh wow, it's September now and I don't even know where it all went. Whereas if you live consciously, it's nearly living with some type of purpose or intention where you are aware of the decisions that you're making and how you're allocating your resources and what moments are you trying to create in your life that are going to be memorable. You know, and I think that's where Die with Zero is awesome for that. And it even talks about like one of, you know, funnily enough, we were talking about going on the trip together.
Yes.
So one of my best mates ended up coming with me last minute. He flew over 2 days before it. He's a teacher. You know, he's got young kids. It wasn't an easy thing for him to do, but he actually was listening to Die with Zero and he was listening to that pod episode. And he's like, well, I think I just have to make this move, even though it might hurt, you know, repayments and life and all that for the next couple of weeks. I'm going to make the decision to come over because, you know, he's getting closer to 40 and he's like, I just want to store some of these memories that I'm going to be able to capitalize on for the next 20 years. Right. And we went over at the best time. And at the end of it, he's like, that's amazing. Like, you know, this is going to give me energy. And it was such a worthwhile investment of, you know, time just to make that short-term sacrifice because now I've got something here that's going to compound for the rest of my life. And it's also around timing those things, right? Like I'm in my late 30s. And even say doing trips like that, and, you know, obviously super grateful being in a position to be able to do those types of things for multiple reasons, you know, having my wife's support, you know, having a bit of flexibility with work and all these other things. But like I started realizing as well, like those types of trips, that would have been a pretty hard trip to do if I was maybe 65. You know, it wouldn't be the same. So it's nearly one of those things, if you're putting things off, but you can do it now, it might just be around questioning that. You know, like, is it really worth putting it off and just being like, hey, I'm just going to do the right thing now and then in 15 years' time I'll go and travel. The reality is it might not be the same thing. You might not actually want to travel then. You might have grandkids or something at that point and that moment will have passed by. You know, so it's really about making, I think, the most of the opportunities that present themselves at the best time possible. When you do have that energy, when you've got the vitality, when you've got the desire of it. And it probably goes back to the Alchemist a bit too, right? Like at some point, I think in our lives, like those dreams, they'll just stop knocking at the door. You know, that excitement or that energy to do things, it might just diminish. And this is just more my like personal values and beliefs. Like I think more and more as I get older, I'm really here just to serve sort of my, like the really pure dreams that I've got. And then also the dreams of those that I really love as well. You know, and that's like nearly simplifying sort of that purpose around that, because I think it's one of the craziest things that human beings can do is like we can have dreams and have like visions and imagination for things that don't really exist. Like if you actually break that down, how crazy that is. Like no other animal really does that. You know, like a giraffe probably doesn't have dreams, and that's a pretty cool animal. I don't know why. I don't know why we went there.
No,
Like, that was the worst wrap up to a point.
I didn't. I'm with you.
Yeah.
I hope everyone else is.
No.
Mate, there's so much there about that you mentioned that I sort of just want to touch on quickly because die with zero. You know, this notion of dying with zero. It's not just about financial, and I totally get like you know, elephant in the room. There are situations we're in an economy at the moment that is super tough, and you know, groceries are expensive. It's incredibly tough to buy a house in those markets, those sorts of things. So they're realities, right? But there's also this reality too of it doesn't have to be a financial thing. It can be like sweat, you know, like working.
Absolutely.
I look back to it. It's made me question every experience that I've ever had and been like dollar for dollar, what's the best value I've had from an experience? Yeah. So maybe go forward, talking about that trip that you went on, you know, like that might have cost you a lot of money because it was a big trip. You're traveling overseas, you're there, but the experience and the you know, the knowledge and the perspective it's sort of, you can't really measure that to come back. So it's almost like doing a uni degree in a course. Yep. So you're getting all this knowledge. Mm-hmm. Then I look back to other experiences in my life, like, you know, where I've traveled. Yes, tick the box. That's been awesome. Definitely, you know, it's expensive when you do travel, but the value you get from that, the experiences, as we just mentioned, are awesome. There's other ones too that I've even thought about around like when I've had small part-time jobs. So used to work at a radio station. At the time, I was like, fucking hell, man, I'm on like $15 an hour. Like, this sucks. Yep. But I look at the value of that job because without that job, I would not be doing what I'm doing now, because it taught me that experience of like, this is what you don't want to be doing and this is what you need to do to get to that next period. And then to look back now and go, fuck, I actually got paid to work that out. Yes, it was a small amount, but I actually made money out of working out what I want to do.
Yeah, somebody paid me to figure out my life.
Someone paid me $15 an hour to work it out. Yeah. So you can literally look back on any moment of your life and
Moff's living that right now.
Yeah. And some things you go, fucking hell, I worked that job. Moff's probably thinking, I'm working this job, listening to these fucking idiots. Yeah. And this is a waste of my time. Yeah. This is an absolute waste of my time. So like, there's just so many things you can equate to that argument, and I love it. There's the other thing as well that I really enjoy about it is, you know, thinking about every decision I make now going, is this going to serve, like, what am I getting out of this, as well as what, like, is it costing me to do it? Yeah. So it just opened up my eyes to so many bits. But I love that part about, I think it references in the book about, like, you know, time, money or savings is a really good way to think about energy. Yeah. And, you know, if you have $10,000 of savings or $100,000 of savings or $1 million of savings, that's almost like 100,000 bits of energy or 10,000 bits of energy, 1 million bits of energy that you haven't used, because you've got it, it's there. And then it's like, how do you then use that energy to then get something out of it back again? So, you know, you can do the traveling, you can buy the course, you can actually give that to other people. You know, like there's that, you know, I'm not at this page yet, my family out there, but you see some parents go like, you know, when I pass away, I'll leave all this money to my kids. Yep. And it's like, well, what you could actually do is maybe give them a little bit of money and say, go and start that small business. And you can actually live through them and see that energy instead of not being around to see it. So there's heaps of really cool things like that too.
Absolutely. And I think it's always, when we're thinking about resources, you know, sometimes people just focus on the money aspect, but you've got to look at it, I think, at least at 3 forms of resources. It's time, energy, and money. And it nearly becomes a skill set around how you then navigate that, right? And it requires some planning, right? To I think, do, like even if you are looking at traveling, that actually requires a fair bit of strategy and planning. It doesn't matter if it's your family holiday or if you're just going away for 2 days. Like, you've got to be like, okay, well, can my work allow that? Do I have the resources for this? What's the itinerary going to look like? Like, there's a fair bit of coordination stuff there, and it's nearly a skill set again in terms of designing that type of lifestyle, whether it's, you know, going on adventures or travel or doing a course or getting that side, you know, part-time gig to learn something. All these things, I think, require just a little bit of strategy and planning, and that's something that we're not really taught. You know, it nearly becomes a bit of a skill set. And I fundamentally do think that this is one that the vast majority of people can do, but it's just something that we don't really prioritize.
Time, energy, money, like just going through that, like,
and just having like a broad-based plan for what does the year ahead look like, what does the next 6 months look like, and what are the key moments that I actually want to create during that period of time, right? Like if I ask even people that I'm close to that know a lot about this stuff, and I'd ask them, all right, well, over the next 6 months, what are just 2 or 3 things that you really want to achieve and that you want to look back on in 6 months' time? I'd say 80-90% of them would be like, I don't know. It'll be like, I just want to get through the year. I haven't had time to think about it. I'm just too busy. I'll think about that later once I'm in a spot. And like the reality is like when you're living like that, you're never going to be in a spot. That time's not just going to hit you one day where your life's just going to slot into place just because you're doing the exact same things that you're doing today. And then it's going to give you all this, free time and energy to start doing all these things that you've got maybe tucked away right in the back of your mind. So like the advice here is, you have to bring that stuff to the forefront. Like it doesn't matter where you are at life. Like you could be battling, uni students just trying to figure out things. You can still practice these skills around how to ultimately how to design the life that you want to live a little bit more.
Well, obviously we did this through your Recalibrate program when we're doing it. And I think like the really cool part of this that I love that we did through it was you said like open my phone and you're like look through your photos and I was looking through my photos and you're like anything over the last 12 months you look at and go fuck that was sick that sort of lit you up a little bit. That is a moment. Like how can you create more of those moments and those things that give you back into it? And through that, we obviously did our values. I'm sorry to rehash on this again, but to those listening that listen to the Brass episode, but my values are moments, environment, freedom, and growth. So I want to create good moments with people I love. I want to be in good environments. I want to work with cool people. I want to have a clean house that we sometimes is there. I want to have the freedom to go away when I can, and I want to continually push myself to grow in other aspects. And if it's one of those 4 values, and there's an opportunity that presents in those, I've got to put time, money, and energy into it.
And it is, and it's there. It's even looking at I love looking at your bank statements, right? So you look at your memorable moments, and it's funny when you look at your memorable moments. So many of them are free, right? Like it'll be hanging out with just somebody that you love, and like having a laugh and thinking back to a joke that you had with them. Like there's so much there that doesn't actually cost anything. Maybe costs a little bit of time and a little bit of energy, but then again, we still don't probably schedule those in enough. Like how many times do we sit there and we're like, oh, like I love hanging out with John. It's like, how many times have you spoken to John this year? Oh, once. It's like, why? Like we know the things that light us up, that give us that energy, that make us happy. But often we nearly consciously ignore them, right? And that's how, like a big thing when I look back as well as my life is I just hate regrets. I hate putting myself in a position where I'm going to regret something. And I think regret comes from either missing an opportunity or not really taking the actions that were needed, at the time when they were needed. And the only way that I can figure out how to minimize that sort of feeling of, not feeling that regret or guilt of missing those opportunities is just by sort of front ending that and really spending a lot more time on planning out life, right? Like obviously a lot has to go well around you as well for that to happen. But I also know, coming from the background that I came from, I've lived a life where a lot didn't go right. And I know what that's like, and I think it just provides me with that lens of, that you can transform it. Like you don't need to come from a really good family or come from, a lot of wealth. Like you can design these things, especially living in a country like Australia. Like we have so many opportunities here where it's open to us.
It's cool, man. It's very cool. It's good. It's cool to hear from, I think sometimes, knowing your story, and I'm sure, go back and listen to the other podcasts we've done and in depth. We won't, obviously it's a long story, so I don't want to do it justice going through it today, but go back and listen to Ali's story. And I know sometimes for me to sit here and say, people are like, you've transitioned from an AFL career, what the fuck would you know? But it's not, it isn't about what I know. It's about surrounding myself with people that do know and have had those experiences too. And we've all, mate, I always say this to people, like people always ask me, who do you want to have on the podcast? Who would have a good story? And I'm like, man, every fucking person has anyone. I could sit down with any single person right now and we could have a good chat about this because everyone's had things.
Everyone's got a story.
Everyone's got a story. Yep. What else? So heading into as we said before, August.
Mm-hmm.
Give us one more book or
Yep.
2 more books
Okay.
that you'd listen to on the Vin and Ali show or read if people, because I'm like, I can't tell people that I'm going to go and read this transparently.
Yeah.
So what would you just say? Hey, go read the blurb of this and see if it tickles your fancy.
Yeah.
And what are they about? Why do you like them?
Yeah, cool. So I'd say my top 3 books.
Top
Just,
3.
Just
How
in
many have you
general,
read?
About 700, I think. I started slowing down a bit though, sort of running out of ones that sort of blend into each other a bit. But this is this is like a conscious investment again. Like I go back to The Alchemist and that, and like the start of the Future Golf journey. When I started that, I had no idea about business and how to start and run a business. But one of the things that I really wanted to do is I wanted to educate myself a lot more, and I was super curious about the game. You know, like not only the game of business, but also the game of life. And ultimately, I wanted to have. I think why I was drawn to entrepreneurship is because it can teach you so many life lessons. Like even as a spiritual journey, I don't think anything tests you more or teaches you more about life than starting, you know, taking an idea from a seed into something over a 10-year period, and like what you have to also do to transform yourself internally, right? Like I used to love having a drink when I started that business, but slowly realized that the way that I operate, like losing 2 or 3 days every month and making, you know, the odd bad decision when having a couple of too many beers, it's like, that's not really going to serve me on this journey. You know, I started getting more into like mindfulness and meditation and stuff because the game of business was so volatile that if you ride every single one of those waves emotionally, it's probably not going to serve you too well and you're going to be cooked within 2 or 3 years. So it's like, all right, well, what's a tool that I can use? Oh, okay, wow. You can meditate, you can do these things where you actually get a little bit beyond your mind. You become more of an observer and you can lower your heart rate. You can focus on your breathing. It's like you need these tools when that storm is around you. So you learn all these, you know, learn about stoicism and, you know, a lot of ancient philosophies on just how to live life, right? And then you can integrate those into it. And it's amazing, like, you know, I pretty much committed to trying to read 100 books every year for the first 5 or 6 years of that business journey, and just wanted to absorb as much information as I could, right? And there's probably about 20 or 50 that really stood out, and it's like, all right, these books are amazing. They really resonate with me. And funnily enough, like after a while, you really, like, you're just thinking about your own stuff while you're reading. You're not really taking in all that much new information, but reading to me became the number one hack to play the game that I wanted to play. Because I'm like, if I have all that knowledge and I can sit on the shoulders of all those giants that have gone before me, it'll just help me navigate the uncertainty of the game that I'm about to play. And it 100% was the best investment that I ever made, was just putting in the time and energy and money into, you know, either purchasing or reading those books over that. Now, I don't think anyone else, like, I wouldn't recommend doing it that way, but just reading like 5 books a year, you're going to get so much out of it, right? Yeah, my top 3 books, going back to the original question, would be The Alchemist, Power of Now, and 4 Hour Work Week I'd still probably have in there, just because it's such a great book on practicality. Power of Now is just an amazing book just on being in the present moment, breathing, getting beyond your mind. And then The Alchemist, I just love it because of the journey that he goes on.
The Power of Now, the Eckhart Tolle.
Yeah.
You went on the camp last year.
Yeah, I did that one in October last year.
I think I've butchered this on about 7
Yeah,
podcasts.
I love it. I read this
I'm telling your stories for you.
No, it's beautiful.
Give
I love
us-
listening to them, and you make them better as well than what they were. So it was amazing.
I had an extra bit of mayo, 10%
yeah.
onto them.
Yep.
Give us a quick rundown on the trip to...
Yeah. Well, I heard your episode with Barras, and, you know, don't know him, but he sounded like a pretty impressive.
Was it in Iceland?
That one was Norway.
Norway.
Yeah, I did that. So, like, there's stuff like
Pretty
that.
sure it was Iceland, man.
Yeah, no, Iceland, wherever you want it to be.
Yeah.
It's like, but yeah, he does like a 5-day retreat every year, and like, if you haven't seen him before, he's just this old guy that just sits there in his seat, and right, it's insane just to get he's just being in his energy, because it's like the calmest and most still energy ever. Like, he'll sit there for like 20 seconds before anyone starts speaking. He's like, I'm just waiting for the talk to start, you know, and like it's the opposite to any keynote speaker that you'd ever see in your life. And yeah, like, you know, I think plenty of people out there like that. You know, like I think I was listening to your episode with Tom Barras, and he was talking about going maybe to India and going on different meditation. I think it's just, again, it doesn't matter who you do it with or whatever it is, but if you can do 3 to 5 days in a spiritual setting of any sort.
It scares me though, man, because I just don't, it's like...
Well, but that's the beauty of it though, is like at the start, your mind wants to be so active. And then at some point, like I think Tom Barras might have said it in his thing, you end up going into this space where like you can just feel every part of your foot and the mind just isn't doing anything and you're just walking and you're just so present. And like, it's probably the equivalent of like doing magic mushrooms without doing magic mushrooms, because like all of a sudden you're just going beyond what you know is a reality. And you're like, shit, I can just do this just through sitting quietly and breathing. Like that's as complicated as it is. And it just probably puts a lot of the complicated things in our lives just into perspective, that, yeah, I probably don't need this mental loop constantly in my head telling me I'm good, shit, indifferent. Like I could just go sit and breathe for 20 minutes and transform my state a little bit. Like it sounds simple and weird and thingy, but yeah, I just highly recommend experiences like that. And it's no surprise that so many athletes and high performers, and even, you know, like I hear so many of your guests talking about some recent retreat that they've been on or some type of meditation experience of some sort, and then what it then actually does to their performance. Like I think Nat Fife might have spoken about in one of your episodes as well, like going off to India and, you know, doing all that stuff. Like there is something in it for sure. Like I'm not an expert in it by any means, but yeah, it's something that's definitely had, you know.
Oh, there's a trend there for sure. It's a part of impact. Me as well. You know, go back to that earlier comment about, I don't even know if it matters what it is. It's just the act of actually committing to it, and like who knows sort of where it goes.
What I found as well with like meditation and stuff, whether it's like Buddhism or, you know, yogi background or whatever, like I've never really experienced one where you feel like you're forced to believe in anything or anything like that. It's pretty like, you know, it's not really like religion based. It's usually just a practical thing of just sitting down and getting into a nice space.
Love it. Mate, as a part of the series as well, you do a lot. I haven't given you any heads up on this either, so you don't need it. You love being thrown on the spot.
Yeah, cool.
Dove Men+Care, we love to give full credit to someone in our lives, because it's, you know, the show's about it is about, you know, checking in with our mates, which you've done recently. You took your mate away to Paris, obviously, through the Olympics, and then other people that have helped us support. Who's someone in your life do you reckon has been a massive like you'd love to give full credit to, that's helped you get to these spaces?
Yeah.
I think that I could nearly pick a couple for you.
I'd like to
hear yours.
No, pick mine.
No, I'd like to hear yours. I'd like to hear yours.
Can you pick just one for me first?
I'd say Vin.
Yeah.
I'd say Vin's been pretty big for you.
Yeah. No, Vin's been massive. You know, he's been a pretty big constant, especially over the last 10 years in my life. And I think it's rare to find people that like are just so emotionally in touch and intelligent and can just take a lot of practical actions for you as well that just improve your life. Like I think there's, you know, in life we have people that are awesome supporters, awesome friends, but then to actually have the ability to then influence your life in a meaningful way, that's a whole different level. And like he's just taught me so much around, you know, caring for other people, around generosity, around doing cool acts for people if you can, and, you know, and then just sort of being the recipient of all of these things and truly seeing somebody that lives an abundant life, right? That doesn't have much ego, that is very humble, very tightly connected to their values, and just having that. Like if people haven't checked out Vin's stuff, Vin Zhang, like go check him out and like get your own feel, like, because yeah, what he kind of spruiks and teaches, like it's impressive, but then you actually know him on a personal level and it's like a whole different level of impressiveness.
We've obviously done the podcast with him too a couple of years back in Adelaide. Go have a listen to that. But unbelievable story. English is his third language. He teaches communication to Microsoft and you know, crazy guy.
What I've really learned as well is like I think what he actually really teaches people is just how to connect with themselves and connect with other people. And that's something that we don't really get taught either. Like communication's one part around being able to tell a great story, to be able to use your hands well and not have filler words. That's the practical aspect of it. But I think also curating an environment where you can connect with yourself better, you can connect with those that you love better, and, you know, ultimately like just making people, I think, better people.
So cool, man. What's on for you for the rest of the year? What do you want to get out of the next 3-4 months?
Mate, it's funny, like I was just reflecting on my year, and probably if I look at the big boulders, you know, like if we'll go back to that analogy, if you can have boulders, which are the really big things, rocks that are like, you know, sort of medium, and then pebbles, which are the small things in our life. Like, I think I've ticked off most of the boulders this year. Like, I really only had 2 real major ones. One was going on sort of one of these adventures, like the Olympics and that. And then the other, we moved house earlier in the year, which has been awesome. So I'm pretty content on that side. Like, if I'm actually looking at the next 3-4 months, it's probably just around getting into a good routine, just letting it unfold, enjoying the weather, enjoying the place. You know, I want to spend a lot more time with the kids just in terms of their development as well. Like, my oldest Marcel's really getting into cricket at the moment, so mate, he started doing your business.
Oh man, this is I don't.
Mate, you know he's got you as his screensaver.
Oh mate,
like on his iPad at the moment.
I'm telling you,
it's
now,
the weirdest thing. I see there on his iPad.
Marcel, Ali's son, will be something one day, man. Like, I'm not joking. He obviously you did me a favor and bought a couple of my books. I signed them for you, and then Marcel was selling them for 3 times the price on his own website that he made. And like doing YouTube shorts, like build his YouTube channel. I couldn't, like, that entrepreneurial streak is just, and he's just like, he just beams energy, man. Like, he's such a good kid.
Yeah, he's genuinely like one of my favorite humans. Like, he's just so impressive. Like, I admire him, you know, like, even since he was a kid, there's qualities that he has that I just wish that I had and I'll never have. And I'm like, damn, like, that's pretty cool.
He's so cool, man.
It's probably just a biased parent.
Yeah, well, it is, but I've met him, and I think like what he's doing is pretty cool.
So like, I think just that, like, I'm probably, like, again, chapters shifting now. Like, I really want to try to, you know, move away from just satisfying my own sort of dreams and desires, but more around, you know, it sounds cliche, but doing that for those that I love, like, a bit more than what I'm at the moment. So yeah. The kids are just something really exciting, you know, in terms of the ages that they're heading into now and their interests and their personalities developing, and seeing how we can help that along.
You didn't ask, but
yeah, I did.
No, well,
yeah, I will.
I'm thinking about myself, and just maybe this is like a little solo mini where I'm just brain dumping. Yeah. But I think one thing that's been, I can't have this constant feeling every year of like getting so much improvement, but also going backwards in other areas as well. And it's almost, I don't know if it's maybe just that idea of like, the more you know, the more you like pick up on the things that you need to get better at. Yeah. Does that sound right? Like, maybe that's what it is. But I think for me, there's been so many things that have gone well, but I actually look back and I go, am I like happier now than I was at the start?
That's an interesting question, isn't it?
And I just like,
are you?
Well, some aspect, like obviously family and that life I am, but then there's other things where I go like this, you know, maybe with everything that's going on, I'm like, sometimes I think like, has it grown to a point where like I'm struggling to enjoy it as much? So I think for me, like, I want to just get back to really just enjoying what I'm doing, and not like thinking about what's happening in the future and where that goes. And again, these are just those mistakes, not mistakes, I suppose, like those lessons that you've got to, I suppose, fuck it up to work it out. I said this year that my big thing was consolidation of like, you know, bringing things in. And I feel like all I did was the fucking opposite to that. Like, I just knew, like, I had a goal of doing less and then just went wider still. So I've realized that now. Had, you know, a few things that have sort of popped up this year and just gone like, no, I've just got to stick to my path and not let sort of, you know, put the blinkers on a bit and just like stay sort of focused. So I think for me, that's a big one that I want to get out of the rest of the year, is just sort of really enjoying myself. Like, you know, it's really funny actually. I don't think Sam will mind me saying, but we were chatting yesterday, and Sam and I like have a massive amount of respect for each other. Sam's our EP here. And we've got this thing that we're doing, and I just didn't have an answer on it yet, like what was going on. And I was like in my head, like, man, what the fuck is going on with this? Like, we need to work this out. Like, I need to put in other shit. I've got this other stuff. I was getting like really, you know, frustrated about it. And he's like, man, like, he's like, at the end of the day, we're going away, getting like, it's an awesome job. We're not doctors. We're not scientists. And I was like, yeah, fuck, like, you're right. Like, and I just completely lost my, like, completely lost it. I was just like, but I know it wasn't about that situation. It's like the 10 other things that had happened before it that get you to that. So I just need to chill the fuck out, really, is what I'm trying to say. Just don't want to take things as seriously.
Yep.
But it's hard to have that and then have the drive still, you know? So there's no answer to that.
It's both.
You know what? Last thing to sum this up that gives everyone no faith on life is I just have realised no matter where you get to, there's going to be shit going on all the time. Right. So never think, unfortunately, if you think there is a pasture out there that is just like you're killing it, no problems, and everything's going on, it's not possible. It's not there. So just embrace it.
I love you said a word happy. Right, and it's one of the hardest things, right? Like is how do you judge or gauge happiness, and how do you judge or gauge improvement? And I think the reality there is like you just can't. It's a continuum, you know. Like there's such a duality in just experiences, you know, positive and negative, and you can never objectively assess those, right? So if you think about it, and I said, hey, Dyl, when's the time when you were the happiest? When would that be?
Well, you'd go back to like when you were a kid or something like that.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But like, what's it's more you're just trying to trace back an emotion.
There's no actually like time where you think, I was actually the
like a feeling, right? But if you then probably had video footage off that time that you're reflecting on, there's probably 10 things there that weren't going right as well at that exact 100%. Same time, right? Yeah. And it's just a core part of life. So I'm nearly getting to the point now where if I'm sitting there, because this happens as well. Like I think I look at where you're at right now, and you're pretty close to living your dream.
Yeah, I
right?
am.
In so many ways, right? Like when I think about your family and your pod and your business and everything that you're doing, right? But how hard is it still when you think about it? And I think this is nearly one of the prices of, I'll put it in quotation marks, of success and progress, is you start nearly getting addicted to that feeling of progress and success, and you start nearly judging against other moments, you know? So my advice there would just nearly be simply like, put that aside and just accept reality. It's like a paradox of accepting reality and then also not really accepting reality. It's a bit like when athletes talk about you need ego, but then you also need to leave the ego at the door to really perform at your best. It's nearly you need to just hold both in the same room and let them dance with each other. And sometimes that dance will be weird and awkward and it will feel a little bit disjointed. And that's when you'll feel like, oh shit, you know, like now, like I can't appreciate this moment. I want this trip to be better. I want this project to go better. And there'll be certain things that you'll do there that might improve it. But it's also then holding that loosely, like you said, where can you still infuse joy and that nice energy into it, right? And I go back to that. Like I'm so much more about energy now. Like what are things that are going to drive that nicer type of energy? Like the more and more as I get deeper into this game, is I like avoiding things that have a heavy energy to them as much as possible. I don't want to play with that as much. I used to love it. I used to love playing with the stuff with the really heavy energy and trying to punch my way through it and really figure it out, because sometimes at the other side of that, there's a really big reward. But I'm like, look, I'm happy to take a smaller reward, but just to dance with a nicer energy as I get just a little bit older. And that's maybe linked to just feelings of peace and joy and that, because sometimes when you are being judgmental or you're trying to really improve something, we do automatically infuse a darker energy on it because there's expectation. You're looking at two things, your judgment and expectation. And when we dance with judgment and expectation, there's usually a feeling of failure, of disappointment, of this isn't good enough. And then that comes with a cost. Right? Now, sometimes that can also lead us to improvement, but that is usually the price to pay with that. So my recommendation would be like next time you're having that conversation, it's nearly going back, getting that correction. It's awesome that Sam gave it to you because he gave you a reframe. And then it's like, okay, well, am I actually adding things here that are going to improve this versus just expressing emotions around something that doesn't feel good enough?
Yeah. And I've like reflecting on, you know, that situation, there's probably millions of them that I've had, but I think just like when I was having a bit of a moment a few months ago and I called you and it was, I can't remember the analogy. I'm not good with analogies, but I remember.
I like when you do them though.
I don't. It was something about an elephant and like, you know, if you look at eating an elephant, if you're close up, time. It looks big, but if you're away, it looks better. And I just keep thinking now, like,
that's so not it.
Something like that.
Not even close. I love it. It's like if you look close. I think the analogy you're referring to is
What's that? Yeah, what is that? Just in case someone needs it.
If you're gonna try to eat an elephant, eat it one bite at a time.
I like mine
Don't
better.
try
It's
to
like
eat it.
it's almost like take a because if you're up close to it, you go, geez, that's fucking big. And then if you step back, you go, you know what? If I just take
That's
one bite
small.
at a time, I can go get this slowly.
Okay,
Anyway,
I like it. Oh, good.
A part of that
Okay.
is just identifying those situations when you're in them,
Yeah.
taking one bite at a time or coming back, looking at it from a distance, and just knowing that, again, I cringe when I say this, but it is all about just the journey, not the destination anyway. So one problem, you get through it, fucking guess what, tomorrow there's another one.
There'll
It's
be
the
one
same
waiting.
thing.
That's right.
But mate, I appreciate you catching up.
Mate, that was
So good to
amazing.
see you.
Good
I love
seeing you,
doing
brother.
this. This is sort of just an insight into. I do want to give everyone an insight too. You're not just this guy that talks wisdom all the time. You're a bit of a sicko as well. You're quite a funny man that gets a bit
Off
really
camera.
weird. So maybe we get that side.
Nah, I don't think
another
we do.
time.
Nah, we just keep that one. That's ours.
Go keep that one
we'll leave
behind
that
the
one on
scenes.
side.
Ali, thank you, brother. Guys, if you want to go and check out Recalibrate again, I can't recommend it enough. Please do. Is there a website?
There is recalibrate.online, and yeah,
Yeah, take it up.
I think we've had about 500 people that have gone through the program now, which is pretty cool.
So good.
We've got to start. We haven't properly launched it yet, so we should
No,
probably
you
do that
should
at some
do
point.
that. Yeah, at some point. Try and launch it.
Yeah, no, it's on the list.
Mate, thanks again. Really appreciate your time today. You're a star.
Awesome, brother.
Love you.